In the past, the Department of Border Enforcement is part of the Ministry of Interior, and this relates back to the question on intelligence integration. But if they detected a situation that required that they have some intelligence that's hot, they would report it up through their chain to the Ministry of Interior. But just behind that force is probably an Army force from the Ministry of Defense. And until the last 3 or 4 years ago, we never really saw very much in the way of positive communications between these two different ministries, and certainly not at the tactical level. That's one thing that has changed over the last couple of years. They've increased their coordination so that the guy on the border, if he sees a threat developing, one of the first calls he makes is to his brother in the Army that's going to provide additional security and potentially support him, as well as running it up the chain. And so the levels of integration have improved over time, and based on that, as well as the start of sharing of intelligence with other countries, that's helped them defeat some of the border threats that they face. Now, on the Syrian border has been the dominant place where foreign fighters, in particular, supporting al-Qaeda, have come across the last number of years. Now, they don't originate in Syria. They originate throughout the region, everywhere from the Arabian Peninsula, northern Africa, etc. But they have come through Syria and have come across the border and have been received in networks inside Iraq for onward integration or movement to conduct operations, really in support of al-Qaeda. This is one thing that that we've seen a significant degradation in those networks and their ability to bring foreign fighters across the border. Some of it may be impacted by the situation in Syria, but actually we were probably down to about 10% of the number of foreign fighters coming across the border a year ago from what we saw in 2006 or 7. So it was very high back then. It's a trickle now compared to what it's been. It's dropped even more in the last year. And the dominant reason is because of the effectiveness of the U.S. and Iraqi counterterrorism efforts inside Iraq. We've been very successful attacking these cells, exploiting the intelligence, and then using them to learn more and go after the next cell. And when there's nobody on this side of the border to receive the foreign fighters as they come across, you're able to have a significant impact on the network, and that's exactly what's happened. The Iranian border is a different story altogether. The Iranian Quds, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard's Quds Force, which has got the responsibility for operations in Iraq, has been providing direct support to 3 of the major Iranian-backed militant groups in Iraq. These are the Promised Day Brigade, which is the militant wing of the Sadrist movement, a group called the League of the Righteous, or Asab al-Haq in its Arabic name, and Kataib Hezbollah. And they've provided them with manning, training, certainly equipping, intelligence support. The leaders of these groups actually live in Iran. And even though we haven't seen much in the way of attacks, they've reduced significantly over the past couple of months. The flow of munitions has continued. And it's continued, it's not that these groups are using old things out of cache sites that have been buried for years and years. This summer we saw, and one attack was 60 rockets, the majority of which had been manufactured in Iran in 2010. So it's a significant problem. The Iraqi government realizes the extent of the problem, and ultimately what I think is going to shut it down is political dialogue between Iraq and Iran. The Iraqi security forces are capable of defeating the groups, but unlike al-Qaeda, they enjoy a state sponsor, and not until that state decides to shut the operations down is the threat really going to be removed.
That we're being unrealistic.
Sir, I'm from the UK and we have great respect for what you're doing. Can I ask you more of a technical question? How confident are you that the Iraqis have the technical knowledge to maintain the capability for counter-ID, for intelligence gathering and everything else? You have great expertise. How confident are you that the Iraqis can maintain this and even enhance it for the future?
I think that the Iraqi security forces don't have the same tools necessarily that we have. And I think a great example is intelligence. You know, this is one of the areas that they need continued development in. Part of the reason of that is based, or part of the reason for that lack of ability is based on their extreme reliance on human intelligence as opposed to signals intelligence, imagery intelligence, etc. And that's a tradition that has grown up here. But they do have fairly capable human networks, but along the way they've developed this stovepiped or insular system where the people who are actually running agents, for example, don't tend to tell the other people about other people, or certainly not other agencies, about the information they have. And these are some of the remnants, I think, the negative remnants in the culture, in this case military culture or professional culture, that are left over from Saddam Hussein's regime. One is that knowledge, this perception that knowledge is power, and if I retain the knowledge, then I'll retain the power. And of course that's not very helpful when it comes to pooling all of our resources together to get at the best possible understanding of what's going on in a certain situation. Another is lack of trust. I think the people grew up under 35 years of Ba'ath Party rule and learned not to trust each other. They learned to be very wary of each other. So there's an inherent suspicion in all things, and it affects many things throughout the professional military culture. Certainly sharing intelligence. It also affects their logistics and sustainment system. You know, the requirement of proof that one needs help rather than just taking it on one's word if they request a spare part, for example. So on the intelligence side, they are starting to get some signals intelligence capability, in particular the Special Operations Forces, some imagery intelligence capability flying with their Air Force, and they've got some ability to do full motion video to provide it to commanders on the ground real time, but these are nascent. They have to keep developing. Their IED technology has been fairly effective. They got some good route clearance capability. Their EOD soldiers and their engineers are well trained, and they certainly don't lack for their courage. You know, they're out very frequently and doing many great things. But they have not necessarily been able to leverage all the technology that they have to get the best possible effect. Now, with respect to some of their more technical equipment, the M1 tanks, the M109 howitzers, the 35 millimeter Swift class patrol boats that they have, certainly their aircraft. They've got niche capability that's technical and that they're developing, but it's going to have to continue to grow to fully meet their needs for the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have time for one more question. General Buchanan, would you like to add anything at the end here?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, it's been a long time since I've actually been at an AUSA convention, but I want to thank everybody out there for their tremendous support. I want to thank all of our listeners who may have served in Iraq, but certainly I know the entire audience has supported us over the years. I can't describe how inspirational it is to see how far these people have come, how professional the security forces are now, what's happened through the economic sector and the opportunities that they have, and certainly with the development of democracy. I'm very optimistic about the future because I have tremendous faith in the Iraqi people and in their patriotism and in their desire not to squander the sacrifices that they've made. But we couldn't have done this, certainly from the U.S. perspective, without the tremendous support that we've gotten from all of the American people. And those of us who have served here a number of years are motivated every day when we see how far they've come. And we know we know every day what the cost has been, but we also know we can see the opportunities that are out in front of the Iraqi people and are inspired by what they have now. So thanks to everybody for your support. I hope the 10-miler was won by somebody fast. It always is. That's a fun race to watch. So thanks for everything.
Thank you again, sir.